Hello there, and welcome to Wildcard Decks. And today I have the probably most aggressive deck that I've made because it does have the most aggressive leader in Kylo Ren. Now, I did have a Kylo Ren deck from set 2, which I couldn't bring myself to revisit because it was a lot of 1 health units, so Death Star, Stormtrooper, Greedo, etc., all those kind of things. And with how many leaders and different ways there are of putting out just 1 damage, it's probably not in a very good place. So I've had a complete rethink on it, and it's quite heavily inspired by the Asajj deck that I posted sometime last month because it focuses on some separatist synergies, but we'll get into it properly now. So this is mainly a ground deck, but it does have a good space presence as well. In terms of resource cost, with Kylo, or how I play Kylo anyway, if you don't win quickly, then you don't win at all. So we don't want too much on the expensive side of things. We do have an 8 cost, but that is Count Dooku, so it's a little bit misleading because you're going to be looking to exploit him out rather than playing him on 8 resources. And then in terms of rarity, there is one legendary, which is his silencer. And then there's quite a few rare cards. I think that's beefed up a bit because of Count Dooku and Fallen Lightsaber off the top of my head. And yeah, the rest are common and uncommon, so relatively plausible to put together. So Kylo Ren himself. So what does he do? When he's not deployed, you can discard a card from your hand and give a unit +2 for this phase. You're not going to want to do this all of the time because while you are sort of incentivized to do so, because when he is deployed, he gets a -1 attack penalty for each card that's in your hand, but you do need to be able to play cards in the game as well. So it is a bit of a balancing act and knowing when to discard to give a boost, because also is your opponent going to be able to deal with the card that you've boosted? So it is knowing when to do it and when not to, which is half the skill of the deck, really. For the base, I go with Petranaki Arena, which is a nice addition for Kylo, because if you've got 1 card in hand, then it just basically cancels out his debilitating ability. So it just helps you to get more damage in quicker, which is all we are trying to do with this deck of Kylo. So when he deploys, he is only a 4 resource leader, so extremely early. And if you've got no cards in hand, then he's 5, but with Patronaki Arena, he's a 6. He is extremely flimsy with only 4 health, so he dies to pretty much every removal out there. Open fire will kill him, Force Stroke will kill him, Takedown will kill him, and they are all 4 resources or less, so he's extremely vulnerable. Shadowed Intentions might be an option, which is basically the upgrade that protects your units from all those sorts of things and basically means they can only be defeated by units attacking into them. But I've not gone that way with this deck. But let's get into the main part of the deck now. So these are all the ground units that are, I know, space units as well. I clearly remember how I've structured this. So these are all the units that are not separatist. So we'll go through those first. So for the low costs, we've got Guavian Antagonizer, mainly because it's got Saboteur. So if someone puts out a Village Protectors or a bunch of Sentinels, then you can just bypass them completely. Kills Village Protectors in 1 hit. It's also got 3 health, which does help it stick around longer than you might think. And then the bounty is only for your opponent to draw a card, which isn't too significant. Reckless Gunslinger is a 1 health unit that I have put into this deck, mainly because it's got a smuggle option, so you can get it out for 3 resources, and the fact that when it's played, it deals 1 damage to each base, so it just gives you a bit more, a different way of dealing damage. And if you're starting to run out of steam and you're only 1 or 2 damage away from finishing them off, then this can potentially win you the game or get you 1 action away from doing so. Miggs Mayfeld is tailor-made for Kylo, but I would probably swap him out because in my experience, whenever I play him, he just dies immediately and you don't get to use his ability, which is when a player discards a card from their hand, you may deal 2 damage to a unit or base. Can only use it once each round, but still pretty good. So obviously with Kylo's non-deployed ability, very easy to pull off if he's actually alive. But I say most, perhaps because my local players understand Kylo, so they see what how much of a danger Migs would be despite his unassuming stats. But yeah, if you're against someone who perhaps hasn't encountered Kylo, they might just look at him and think, he can stick around. I'm not too worried about him. But yeah, I think I'd probably swap him out, unfortunately, at this point. So Kylo's TIE Silencer, if you've got 3 of these, then absolutely run 3 of these, because these are even more tailor-made for Kylo than Migs Mayfeld. So it's another space unit on the low end of the resource costs that can attack for 3, but crucially, its action is if this unit was discarded from your hand or deck this phase, play it from your discard pile. You still have to pay its cost, but basically this means you can use Kylo's ability to discard the silencer, buff whatever you want, and then even if you've got no cards in hand, you can still play the silencer out for 2 cost. So absolutely tailor-made for Kylo as a leader. I've gone with Lurking TIE Phantom to get more damage in on space. It's one of those cards that unless you shrink it, you're going to have to attack it directly to deal with it, or you can bounce it with stuff like Waylay. But yeah, because we want to get damage in as quickly as possible, this is pretty essential. With a Kylo boost, it will hit in for 6. So yeah, a bit nuts. And then 7th Fleet Defender on a similar sort of vein for Lurking TIE Phantom, but it's shielded as well, so it gives it a little bit more staying power. Or if you're against, if you're against another aggro deck, generally you're going to be able to outrace pretty much any aggro deck if they are not going to take out your units. That's another advantage sometimes. If you're against an aggro player and they're not too familiar with Kylo, they may think they can outrace you. They probably cannot. Unless you get a bad draw, you will outrace them with relative ease, I would say. So, on to the Separatist units, which form the, core of the deck, really, what we want to try and do. So, the series officer, when it's defeated, and it will get defeated, deal 2 damage to a base. So, if you manage to attack into a base with this, and then it dies later, it's done 4 damage for a 2-cost unit. That's pretty good, really. Separatist Commando, for a 2-cost, this has okay stats, but most importantly, when you control another Separatist unit, it gains raid 2, so a 2-cost unit that can hit for 4, and with all of these Separatist units available to us, it's going to be relatively simple to get this active. Now, just going back to Migs briefly, I would probably be looking at swapping him out for droid deployment. We do have some exploit in the deck, but droid deployment just means that you've got more Separatist units out there, so it's more likely you'll be able to get this activated, and also for the Vanguard droid bomber, which I'll get onto in a minute. The B1 attack platform. So I'm not a big fan of this card, but with Kylo, we are trying to get as much damage in as possible, and with 5 attack, it is pretty nuts to be able to do so with that. There is a card later on that I'll get onto, which I think makes this card more viable. I'm still not entirely sold on it, but it is also in here to be exploit fodder for Count Dooku, because if I skip ahead to Count Dooku now, whilst I've mentioned him, because when you exploit cards to play Count Dooku out, for each unit you exploited while playing this card, you may deal damage to an enemy unit equal to the power of the exploited unit. So if you exploit one B1 attack platform, you're going to be able to do 5 damage to an enemy unit, which is going to kill a lot of stuff. So, and if you manage to exploit 2 of these whilst playing Dooku, then you've got 10 damage to spread around, which is going to be quite a significant swing. And because Dooku, you can exploit him for 2, so it can come out on the 4 resource turn, which is when Kylo deploys. So if you have got one of these out and it's survived, then you could exploit 2 units out, ideally if you've got 2 units out still. For Dooku, for 4 resources, clear the field on the opposition side, which protects Kylo when he deploys, and then you can go to town. Asajj Ventress is the other exploit unit that I've put into the deck, and again, she can actually be played for free because she's got exploit 2. So, excuse me. So yeah, each unit you exploit reduces the cost by 2. So, and I think this is again where putting droid deployment in instead of Mig's Mayfeld would be more viable, because then you can play her. You've got 2 cheap units that you don't particularly care about for free. It also ties into the separatist synergies of when you attack with this unit, Asajj, if you've attacked with another separatist unit this phase, this unit gets +3 for this phase, so she's attacking for 5. So yeah, I think droid deployment is probably a better option. I'll shut up about droid deployment eventually, I promise. Onto the Vanguard droid bomber. So when this is played, if you control another separatist unit, deal 2 damage to an enemy base. So again, you're getting damage in for free pretty much, and you should have some separatist units out that will be able to take advantage of that. And then the final space unit I'm playing is the Confederate Tri-Fighter. So this is another new addition for set 3, and Kylo is not interested in healing his own base at all, or at least this build is not, and wouldn't be capable of anyway. But basically, yeah, bases can't be healed. 3/3 in space, so you can trade with a lot of units in space as well. If one of your opponents really wants to heal and they want to get rid of this, they're probably going to lose a space unit or 2 along the way. So yeah, just really useful to have in a Kylo deck. So onto the events, and I've got Daring Raid because it's just flexible. For a 1 cost, you can attack a unit or base, so this might help you get rid of a Sentinel. You're probably going to be using it to attack base. It might help you get over the line towards the end if you're starting to fizzle out and they're stabilizing. But yeah, that's what it's there for. And then Keep Fighting. So ready a unit with 3 or less power. Now, I am a big fan of this card. I seem to use it in pretty much all my aggro decks. But if we have a look at all the potential targets, so everything on this page can be used with Keep Fighting. So like in TIE Phantom would hit for 4. Separatist Commando, similar to the TIE Phantom, would hit for 4. Asajj, depending on how you timed it and sequenced, she could hit for 5. Because if you're not played, if let's say you attack with her, and then attack with a different Separatist unit, and then keep fighting on her, then she'll attack for 5 for her second attack. So yeah, depending on sequencing, and then these 2 can also be used with Keep Fighting. And it just helps get extra damage in that your opponent may not be expecting. If you've got tons of cards in hand, you could even use it on Kylo, but that's not really the goal. But yeah, just helps to, because another good thing can be if you are getting towards or if you have lethal against their base, and they have to take initiative early, otherwise they lose, because they need to put a Sentinel down first thing next phase or something, then if you've got to Keep Fighting, it may actually win you the game anyway. So yeah, I think it's heavily underutilized. So the wildcard for this deck, so the wildcard is basically something that I think has been perhaps slept on or not really widely used or not been properly explored. And with Kylo, a problem that you can have is that you will not have many cards in hand. You will not have many options potentially to play cards. So you're kind of limited to basically one line of attack, I guess. So Unnatural Life, it's kind of a bit like Sneak Attack. So play a unit that was defeated this phase from your discard pile. It costs 2 less and enters play ready, and then it's defeated at the end of at the start of a regroup phase. So you do have to pay 1 resource more than what the unit actually costs, but again, it's an unexpected avenue of attack that your opponent may not be expecting. They may think they've stabilized and won't receive any more damage, but then you can play this and all of a sudden they will. So it's interestingly not limited to non-vehicles, despite the art on the card, but one of the main things that you would be trying to do with this, the B1 attack platform with only 2 health is flimsy as all hell, but if it dies and then you pay the Unnatural Life 3 resource cost. This costs 2 less, so therefore you pay another 1 resource, 4 resources in total. Comes in ready, and then it can hit their base for 5. So that's something that is very possible to do. And similarly with a Sarge, if you attack with another Separatist unit, she could come back and hit for 5. She may have already hit for 5 as well. So yeah, I think Unnatural Life, it's probably not the greatest because you don't get a discount on it like Sneak Attack, but it's just a different option, and I don't think Sneak Attack really works with Kylo itself, because if you're discarding cards from hand, you need to use 2 cards to make Sneak Attack work, because it has to use itself and a unit. So I don't think Sneak Attack particularly works that well with Kylo. I do quite like giving Unnatural Life a go, and it has caught my opponents by surprise. So on to the upgrades, and Hotshot Blaster is primarily in here because it's a smuggle option. You are going to have to pay 3 to smuggle it out, and then you can attack with it at the unit that you attach it to at the same time. So yeah, just a good option because we're not going to have many cards in hand a lot of the time. And then the Fallen Lightsaber, which if you get this onto Kylo, you're just going to go absolutely ham with it, basically. So if you think about it, because these two, well, if you don't smuggle this in, then it only costs 1. In theory, you could get your Kylo leader out and then play both these upgrades on it. That's a +5 boost. He's a 5. Then there's a Petronaki Arena 1 boost. If you've got no cards in hand, he's hitting for 6. +5, potentially. Unlikely to happen. It's more likely that you'll get one of these on him when he deploys. But still, that's potentially 8 upwards damage, give or take, depending on what cards you've got in hand as well. So if you manage to get 2 attacks in with Kylo, you're probably pretty much guaranteed to win the game, assuming he's boosted. So yeah, and then it's a nice bonus on the Fallen Lightsaber, deal 1 damage to each ground unit the defending player controls if it's Force unit. So the other Force units we've got are Asajj and Count Dooku. So Kylo isn't the only one who would be eligible for that bonus, but yeah, it just helps to hit in hard and fast, and the Kylo deploy phase can really win you the game by itself, pretty much. It may not mean you actually have enough damage on their base, but it puts it in such a position that they're not going to be able to recover. So in terms of other options, because there's a few ways you could play it really. Force Throw, so we don't have Kylo's the only Force unit in the deck, so you're probably going to be able to hit this fairly, I don't know, reliably. Arm to the Teeth is another upgrade that can be smuggled, so this gives you more options if you've got no cards in hand, and it's probably the most aggressive upgrade out there, because it's basically, if you've got 2 units out that you're able to attack with both of them, then it's a +4 damage in that phase. Breaking in, so if your opponent is playing a lot of Sentinels, then this would be an ideal option to get that damage in. Droid deployment, as I say, I think I would be tempted to swap MiGs out for this, but I could be wrong. Force Choke, so if you need some removal, then this is another good option, and if you've got a Force unit out, then it's 1 less to play, so you could play Fallen Lightsaber on Kylo, and then Force Choke whatever's out there on his deploy phase. Jetpack, so I think of the 2, Arm to the Teeth and Jetpack, I would probably prefer Jetpack because it gives Kylo, or anyone really, some protection, but Kylo in particular, if your opponent is going to attack into him, or if you have the initiative and you can put it on him straight away, he gets a shield, they're going to have some other kind of removal, like takedown, to be able to finish him off. No Good to Me Dead. I've mainly put it in here because it's just a very good card. It's not something for Kylo specifically, but yeah, it just, if your opponent's got a ground unit that, I don't know, like a Zuckuss or something, then yeah, the Zuckuss isn't going to be able to take anything out for a little bit. On top of things, I think on balance, if you were going to have this or Jetpack is always a better choice. On top of things, I mean, Jetpack, if there's 2 units that would attack into the unit you're jetpacking, then yes, on top of things would be better. But I don't think there's going to be many situations where that would happen. Now, you could always double up on them, but yeah, I think most decks would only really have room for one of them, and the other advantage of Jetpack is you can smuggle it in. So yeah, this is completely separate to this deck, but on top of things is classed as a trick. So if you've got a villainy yellow deck and you're running Jabba, then you can go and pick this out, and it would then cost only 1. So just putting that out there. I haven't seen that out in the wild too much, but it's something I would probably try myself. And then other options, so Surprise Strike, because you get an extra 3 damage in, so that's always very good. Elite P-38 Starfighter, this would probably be mainly to have even more Separatist units out there. And then on the doorstep, so because this would create 3 battle droids and ready them, that's an extra potential 3 damage into their base. It also gives you more Separatist units for the other synergies, but it then gives you even more potential exploit fodder for the likes of Dooku and Asajj. So that's primarily why that is there. So that is the deck. As I say, it is completely geared towards hitting as hard as possible, as quickly as possible. As I say, if you don't win quickly with this deck, you're probably not going to win at all. But it does have a few things to help get you over the line, like Keep Fighting, Daring Raid, and Reckless Gunslinger. And then there's also the likes of Series Officer, Vanguard Droid Bomber, which can get you in damage almost by default. So again, that might help you get over the line as well. And then, as I say, Unnatural Life to take them by surprise and revive a unit they thought they had dealt with that also might be able to finish the game out for you. So yeah, let me know what you think. I am hopefully going to be back to my normal deck building ways in the next week or so, because I have a planetary qualifier in the weekend coming up, so normal service will resume because I will actually be looking at other decks rather than what I'm going to be playing on the I think it's Saturday. So yeah, my next video might be doing a little report from that, depending on how I do, and yeah, what deck I used, etc., and what kind of things I was up against. It looks like it's going to be a very mixed and varied field, which is really good, following the band of Boba. But anyway, I'm getting completely sidetracked. So yeah, let me know what you think. Do like and subscribe to not miss out on further deck profiles that are a bit outside of the norm, and I'll see you in the next one.